Hey everyone, David Berkowitz here in the hometown of the NBA World Universe Champion New York Knicks. Might be a little bit loopy and celebratory on this call today, and who knows where the conversation will go because some things really are bigger than AI, and even taller than AI. No disrespect to Mr. Bronson, who shows you don't need to be the tallest to win. And I'm sure there's some AI or corporate metaphor there, but with a longtime friend and collaborator, Polly Lieberman, who yeah, I mean like we were geeking out in early days of mobile advertising and like mobile social stuff, Polly, when you were buzzed. So easily would go back 20 years and have been I hopefully learning from each other. I've definitely learned a lot from you, and Polly was actually a an early behind the scenes supporter of AI Marketers Guild and helping just figure out how to get this thing off the ground. We'll as a hopefully welcome reminder, these are not typical webinars. These are community conversations. So, Polly, I'm excited to hear what you have to share today about that intersection of owned and paid advertising and some things you're seeing in the space. If we if we get into a few Knicks in five chants or whatever we get to chat now for 2027, then we'll see where this then goes. But it's an exciting week on many levels here. Happy World Cup to all who are celebrating. And Polly, who the heck are you anyway?
Yeah. I've been asking myself that question my whole life, but maybe I can answer it here. Well, first of all,
Yes.
thanks for the warm welcome. And of course, I think that everyone on this call has been learning from you and your awesomeness. We are early pioneers. We like the hard stuff. I consider myself an evangelist of emerging tech. I always love to connect the dots between technology and really brands and how consumers interact with brands. I spent the majority of my career in mobile. So sorry about that because it is now officially an appendage. I see some familiar faces. So hello to my friends and hello to my new friends. Um, and yeah, I really have been on the front lines. I have a lot of opinions about building go-to-market strategies. I am really passionate about early stage and hyper growth stage companies and have been lucky enough to work for some of the best. And being on the front lines, really what I like to tune into is what the market is saying and what my customers are saying. My opinions come from my customers, what their requirements are, what their problems are, and their challenges, and how really the companies that I work for might be able to solve some of those challenges. Like I said, I spent my time in mobile, and then I got a little bored because there wasn't anything emerging, and I was like, well, what do I do? What do I do now? There's nothing new for me as an evangelist of emerging technology. Like the fun part of that is really to be able to working for a California company, I like to say hold hands and kumbaya, but really act as a partner. Where is the value driven conversation with the technology? And how can you really play both an advisor, an educator, and a partner? And all the companies that I have really worked for have been building their solutions iteratively in partnership with the brands, the publishers, the advertising and marketing ecosystem that I've worked in. So I've spent the last number of years after mobile finding my new thing, and then AI fell from the sky, and that's my new thing. So here I am. And I guess that all of the other masochists in the room here that I've known for forever, we like the hard stuff. So we're all in AI too. So my last company actually built image generation models. So I learned a lot about dip my toe in the waters of really understanding deep tech and how models are built and how models can be trained and customized and all the buzzwords like MCP servers. And one thing that I really learned was over my 2-year tenure there, how quickly this AI beast is moving. The images that we were generating 2 years ago or 3 years ago versus 6 months later. So we kind of are living in insane, almost dog years where changes happen on a quarterly basis. My new company that I work for now is really solving something a little bit different, which I think all of the marketers are paying attention to. And if your LinkedIn looks like mine, I feel like I'm living in a bit of a brand visibility AEO, GEO, LinkedIn echo chamber. But ultimately, I kind of reckon this back to the early days of the internet, which I think is when I bought this Knicks hat. I'm super vintage here. I feel like I mean, maybe it was midway through the point when they were longing for a championship. It might have been during the Jordan era when the Bulls really pushed down the opportunity for the Knicks to move forward. But anyway, I digress. Those days of search, really what companies were looking to do during that time period was understand how to get cited, how to show up. And there were multiple phases of, search engine optimization. I know that you did a lot of work here, David, and we're early on that. And then we moved into the marketing phase of it. And I feel like with AI, we have there's a lot. I have a deck that I can pull up and talk to about this. You guys are probably pretty savvy and know this, but not only are we moving at the speed of light, but everything is changing so dynamically. But the key thing to understand in like how brands wanted to understand search is, how does this new surface work? And what does it mean for my brand? And what we saw back then was the brands that really, and in mobile as well, is the brands that leaned in early were the ones that won, because they were starting to, what I like to say is, solve a couple of sides of the proverbial Rubik's Cube, and then continuing to iterate based off of that. So it's really early. I was at a conference last week and people were talking about the nascent world of AI search and brand visibility, and when marketing is going to come into the picture. I feel like right now we're in the test and learn phase and we're trying to understand what visibility means. Okay, so I'll give you a quick walkthrough of GIST and then we can open it up to a Q&A. Just to kind of set the stage, I think we're all pretty familiar with, but the customer journey is changing. We talked about how quickly AI is moving. Demand is being reshaped. And we think about this, that it's not just search is still alive, and we see the growth with that, but questions are really becoming a key part of the consumer journey. And so much of this is controlled by algorithms and how they're really recommending brands. And in order for brands to win, they really have to show up, be credible with authority, and then get chosen. So this is like one of the fastest growth engines really that we've ever seen. So just some key stats here. I think it's always good to level set with some stats. So almost half of Americans are using AI search. I would think that's higher, but that's what the stats say. Pretty recent. And a little bit less than that, 37% of consumers are starting their search journey with AI instead of Google. And then if you look at the under 30 set, then it's almost 3/4, which is crazy town. But I think these are like trends that we saw with all emerging tech. And then everyone's talking about zero click. It's the new norm. 60% of searches are not driving a click. So the blue link is at risk. And when you're in AI mode in Google, it's nearly 100%. So that's crazy town. And then brand metrics that are super important and why everyone needs to be paying attention is that being cited is really the new ranking. We talked about SEO. Ranking is really critical, and a lot of these citations are really coming from third-party coverage. And the majority of brands aren't getting any mentions. And we're seeing the highest converting channel. AI traffic is high intent. Why is it high intent? Because these questions have rich signals. You're no longer searching for best tennis sneakers or tennis sneakers. You're saying tennis sneakers for grass with people who have for women who have wide feet. That's not me, but just as an example, my feet are just normal. I mean, wide could be fine too. And then trust is always a critically important metric for brands, and AI is proving to shape a lot of that trust. So this is why it's critically important to show up in the answer. So we talked about search. The key metric was clicks, social, likes, comments too. And we are now living in the questions era where consumers are really asking before they click. And that is really why Gist was founded. We're pioneering what we like to refer to as the questions economy. I think a lot of other people are referring it to as that as well. So we didn't pioneer that. But our founder and CEO did actually pioneer or was the inventor of paid search. His name is Bill Gross. You may have heard of him. He built Overture, which then was sold to Yahoo and started the whole world of the blue links that Google dominated. We have a lot of experience, deep experience in both advertising and marketing technology. We're an AI native company that really is focused on conversational AI. And the big focus at our company is ensuring that we're brand safe and creating rich, impactful customer experiences. And we're lucky enough to have Bill as our founder, and he's like the master at raising money. So we're well capitalized. We have a good runway. It gives us an opportunity to ideate and iterate and really continue to build solutions, which we're constantly doing. So what do those solutions look like? So we have a brand visibility platform. We have 3 products, Just Geo, Just Answers, and Just Ads, and I'm going to walk you through them. I think one thing that I wanted to call out is I mentioned partnership, and really we are building this for brands, but also publishers. Publishers, the one metric that I didn't share was that publishers are really seeing a massive decline in their traffic, and a lot of this is based on this new front door or way that consumers are starting to search. I mean, I always think it's so interesting that people, like, if you're going to Citibank, for example, what do? You type in Citibank in Google and then click on the link. And that's the behavior, as opposed to going and typing Citibank into the browser. Same thing with a lot of the publishers and a lot of the content and how it's being sourced. So we're very supportive of publishers and think that they're a key part of this equation. So our Geo platform is, if your LinkedIn looks like mine, or obviously we're all marketers here, so you've heard the term Geo, you probably have heard the term AEO. I think people are using them interchangeably. Early days, I think they were considered how you're showing up in LLMs, answer engines, chatbots for generative engine optimization, or AEO, answer engine optimization, which was early on referred to as Google Answers in AI mode. But now they seem to be used interchangeably. I personally don't have a position on it. I think we were scratching our heads about how we've seen this most recent change and how people are talking about it. But really what you're talking about is brand visibility. And what's the most important thing is understanding how your brand shows up, understand where the gaps are in those content, and what you can do about it. So I call this your scorecard. We have metrics that are part of your scorecard, and we work with agencies and publishers. So sort of the most important metrics here as a baseline refer to share of citations, citation rate, share of voice or your brand visibility score, sentiment, and then found links, so that you can really understand how these LLMs work, how they're ingesting your content and understanding your brand, and then contextualizing that based on your competitive set. But most importantly, and this is really what we have leaned into a lot, like we were talking about this at our company, is the TAM of brand visibility is everyone. It's literally everyone, because everyone is going to have to pay attention or starting to pay attention. I think something like 50% of brands have this on their radar. I talked to some people who are saying search is dead because that was their primary channel. I talked to people that are saying, yeah, this is interesting. We're going to be focusing on that in Q4. We can't resource against it. So we see like a wide range of clients, brands who are really focusing on this, but everyone's starting to pay attention and everyone's aware of it. Maybe some people don't know the term geo, but they do know brand visibility. So what we have focused on is really actionable recommendations that are prioritized based on impact and effort to really create a playbook for your optimization strategy. So this is just a little bit of a snapshot. I think that this is a mock for coconut water. And you can see here that this is your action plan. And then it gives you a real specific breakdown of the tasks that you can complete and the order that you should complete them in. And then once these are completed, then you mark them off as complete. And then you get a whole new series of recommendations. And then you would also be able to go back and map your baseline and track the increase over time. So that's geo and brand visibility. And this is your critical scorecard. And this is really why we differentiate in the big platform is one is how we're really focusing on what you can do about it. And we have our proprietary formula, doesn't everyone, on how to do that, which I'm happy to dig in with anyone offline. And then our ads product. And our ads product is really also leaning into questions, this new questions economy. So you guys are getting a sneak peek. We're making a big announcement at Cannes next week or later this week, I think it is. I'm not going to be there, which I'm actually happy about, but don't tell my team. This is our proprietary format that is a questions bar. So what you see here is a scrolling bar, kind of like a ticker, that has questions. So how does this work? So our part of our technology stack can understand page content and then pull relevant questions based on the content of the page right into this scrolling questions bar that can be placed sort of anywhere based on the publisher's choice, but we recommend here. It will also be a Google or a Chrome add-on that you can add to your bar, or rather add to your browser. And essentially what you have here is a combination of article recirculation to drive more traffic to a website, plus ads that are contextualized based on the content of the page. So highly relevant. And this is ultimately part of the path to us building really a questions auction site that is going to be basically a CPC model here. So super interesting, because I think one of the things that people are understanding within brand visibility is what are the questions that consumers are asking, right? And that is what you're going to get with your brand visibility. Another ad unit that we have here is really cool. Again, these are running on the open web, and essentially it turns your ad unit into a full chat, a brand chat. So it's guardrailed with brand approved content. We have proprietary technology that understands what your brand is and then can feed right into this model. There's a combination of open queries, scrolling preset questions, and then an interactive question and answer, so to speak. So this is sort of on the path to brand agents, which I think I saw that the majority of brands today are thinking about and planning for brand agents. So this is essentially a mini brand agent. Really good for product launches, high touch kind of question and answer, consumer driven types of experiences, not just, straight up things that are more self-explanatory. And here's a closer look for LG. So these are two examples. You can see how it works. And there we go. Oh, so just answers. So this is our third product. And this is really a publisher focused product. Super interesting. It's a widget that sits on the publisher site. It takes over the look and feel. It can be placed anywhere that the publisher desires. And similar to the questions bar, we have a hybrid here of editorial prompts to drive more people to different pages based on the content of the page, and then a contextually relevant sponsorship. In this example, we see Gatorade. It's super exciting because the brands that can be sponsored here have this highly relevant exposure in this high authority type of experience. So, and where do these questions lead? And this is what we saw in the questions bar. So these are scrolling questions that you see, and the questions can drive to the destination of your choice, obviously, that answers the question that is presented right here. So how does hydration help players recover? And this is a blog page on Gatorade's site that shows a complete guide to athlete and hydration. And just to bring this to life a little bit better, this is an example on Fortune. So you can see that the widget looks very different. This is about retirement, and this is for Prudential and driving to a Q&A about Prudential. Basically, just to summarize, we have a full suite of brand visibility products. We think that we believe that the connective tissue is this flywheel that is created by understanding the data, owning the question, and then really driving those outcomes through brand growth. And I think that there's a lot of questions, and I anticipate that maybe this might be a question from some of you guys. There's a lot of questions about how does content on a page, highly sourced, highly authoritative, impact your brand visibility score versus, say, some of your paid media. And we're doing a lot of studies there. And one thing that we do know, and this is why we believe very strongly in the deep publisher relationships that we have, is highly visible, highly authoritative publishers are kind of a 1-2 punch if you're looking for both advertising or sponsored content. So it's a really big opportunity and something to think about. And that is also being built into our Geo product.
So, Polly, like now that you all have been in the market a bit, which of these three components do brands seem to care about the most? Like what's the most burning thing? Maybe not the highest impact for them, but just the thing they're ready to move on. Because I think brands get it. They have some appropriate level of FUD, but I'm just curious what you're hearing from the market there, or is there some broader brand journey that you're just seeing like, okay, like this is really top of mind, just solves for parts of it, but like there's a message coming from the market. I care like sort of I feel like everybody's starting to either already get it or get it in general about really how it's impacting their business as a brand. I'm just curious, like, what's the stuff that feels like it's going to move the needle in the next, like, 3 to 6 months for them?
Is a really good question. I think that the things that we're seeing probably would be two key trends. One is that everyone understands that, and I think I said this in the lead-in, everyone understands the importance of brand visibility and showing up in LLMs, depending on the type of company and what your marketing sort of mix looks like and what has really been driving the most outcomes historically. I think it determines where people are leaning in the most. We have some clients that are like, we need to understand brand visibility before we can do any of this. And then we have some customers who are like, this is really interesting because it's kind of the next level of contextual, but you're adding the AI layer into it. And we don't really necessarily understand the questions that consumers are asking. So we want to really lean into an understanding of the questions that consumers are asking and then track those key questions against brand visibility and our competitive set and see what the delta and the opportunity is there. One of the interesting things that we see consistently is, as it relates to brand visibility insights, is almost on every single sort of scorecard metric report is the brands that are showing up and being mentioned in your competitive set. There's always one or two that somebody either never heard of or didn't understand that that was a competitor. And why are they showing up? Because AI understands them in that same query set that is specific for a brand that they may not have even thought was important. So I think that that is when we talked about the opportunity of really getting ahead, paying attention early. I think a lot of it is, what's the most impactful to the business and how are people's businesses being affected? Like I said, we had a customer that said, search is dead. Why? Is because 90% of their marketing initiative is coming from search, and they're seeing a massive decline, 84% decline in their, their site traffic and their acquisition. So what are they doing? They're leaning into everything wholeheartedly. But then people who are not necessarily impacted, maybe social is driving more of, their influencer strategy. So I think it really is all over the map.
So a couple of questions, Polly. The first is, what percentage of search these days do you think is actually going through an AI versus still going to Google or Bing or whatever search engine?
I mean, I think that it's a multi-part answer, right? Because it's like, what are people doing? I think that the most important thing is to understand, what are people doing on the web? Are they going to publishers? Are they going to Google? Are they starting with an LLM? And then specifically when you talk about actually starting with, your chat bot or your answer engine of choice with AI, so what are they doing? Are they rewriting their emails? Are they researching a product? Are they creating a vacation itinerary? So you have to kind of look at those different parts of behavior, and it's a complex answer, right? Because one is, what is the behavior, and then two is, what is the sort of productivity behavior versus the brand outcome-based behavior. And then when you start to segment it like that, then it looks different, and it looks different by category, right? Health is a massive query base, right? We all talked about the Google Doctor. Now AI is taking over, I think, a lot of these health questions. So it's I don't know off the top of my head. We don't look at it exactly like that. We look at it as sort of some of those key metrics that I shared in the beginning, is how is consumer behavior changing, and then contextualizing it based on the need.
And so the next question is, what about Google Ads? Are they still a tool that you use? Do you see them collapsing in the next few years?
I never would count Google out on anything. I think that they will change.
Unfortunately.
Right. I think that if you look back to the metric that I shared about, about zero click, if 60% of all Google searches end without a click, then how are they changing that? So they've made a lot of announcements within the last quarter talking about how they're optimizing their AI, how they're optimizing their overviews and Gemini, how they're citing brands, and then what the key citation is, which ultimately will kind of be the new form of the blue link.
Okay.
But I don't think that it's Google, right? So do you think that, would you count them out on anything?
Not today. We'll see what happens. Yeah, they are Google. They have as much resources as God. They're everywhere.
Totally. And one of the interesting things for me in working for a company that built an image generation model versus what I'm doing now was, if you work in this innovation space, startups are typically doing the hard work and then getting acquired by the big companies, right? This is the first innovation cycle that we have ever seen where big tech is actually building alongside these smaller companies, these startups. Because why? Because this is such a seismic shift in the way that digital functions. And two, and I think that this is most importantly, they have three things. They have three things that they didn't have before that mattered within this context. One, they have compute through their cloud. Two, they have data through, all of their properties. And three is they have the resources, they have the talent. So I think that these big tech companies, I remember I was at a conference and I went up to this guy and he had a very interesting panel. I said, what do you think the impact is on big tech? And do you think that they're really going to win here? And he said to me, do you mean old big tech or new big tech? And I was like, oh, I never even thought about it like that because, Anthropic and OpenAI and the like, these are considered new big tech, right?
Yeah, but they don't have the UX footprint that Google has. I mean, Google follows us in our daily journey in ways that those companies still haven't. I mean, it's going to be a long time before they find a way to do that. I just think that UX footprint is like such an incredible moat. What Google does with it, I don't know, but like
when you say footprint, are you talking about the ecosystem? Because it's a different language in my mind.
I'm talking about our entire daily journey on
Yeah.
digital, and nobody touches my world more than Google. Some of that is because of search, but there's maps, there's everything. And in a world where you start to layer in AI as a part of it, and yes, I get it. Like there is a starting point that is that is moving very rapidly towards frontier platforms in a chat experience. I just don't know that everybody's always going to want a way to do that, and Google's already there as a part of our lives.
And
So
then
for
there's people like me that I almost never go to Google anymore.
Right.
Any search I do, I start with Perplexity. Anyway,
Do you think this audience, though, Adam, is the middle
What's
of
that?
the bell? This audience is not the middle of the bell
That's
curve
true.
there. And
But to Adam 1 or 2's point, you may not start your digital journey or your, internet discovery journey with Google, but, you check your email, you check your Fitbit, you use Waze, you use Google Maps. Like there's so many touch points into Google and all of these, old big tech companies.
See, none of that for me is Google.
Well, and I actually think the biggest sleeper hit that's hard to call anything Google does a sleeper is that Gemini button in Chrome. I am on that so often, just like filling out forms, explaining what to do. Like, I don't want to go through some company's help files or whatever else. It's just like, and then if it's based on any history I have, it has access to my email, it has access to my Google Drive, and I want it to. And so now it's like, oh, I have some like payment question of something I submitted 3 years ago, or like, like what's like buried in some PDF I got from someone. If like this kind of stuff is, where Gemini is now that like full on browser assistant. That's
For me, that's Perplexity and comic.
Mhm.
I started a search engine a few years ago, and I got to look at the underbelly of Google, and I try and avoid them as much as possible. But I understand I'm the outlier too.
Yeah.
You're totally the outlier because
Yeah.
like Comet, it was super cool, right? Or is super cool, but
Yep.
what are the usage stats of that? Who's downloading it? Who's using it? So
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the sort of core business principles of how do you actually acquire customers and create loyalty within, these technology platforms is super hard and super expensive.
Yeah. Yeah. So my last question was, this is looking more of our, like what I call ultra SEO. You have to do SEO plus much more of it and do it much better. So for a company that's just getting started thinking about this, even let's say they've got a basic SEO platform in place, what's your conversation with them in terms of how much work is there? When does that start having a payoff?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And um my favorite answer that people give me is the one I'm going to give you is it depends,
It
right?
depends.
It depends.
Everybody loves to hate that answer from marketers, by the way.
Yeah, I think it depends. I think that the most important thing is your insights, is your intelligence, is really to understand what your scorecard is. And that's table stakes. Like, do we do it better than anyone else? Probably we think so, but it's not that different. We encourage people to compare, our metrics against other platforms metrics, but ultimately what you want to do is understand what you can do about it. Because and a lot of surprises come up, which is how is this press release from 2018 being cited, being sourced? How is that a key part of what is feeding these models? Or, comments. It's coming from comments that consumers are making, on the open web or, in forums, some of your old press releases. So it's really understanding how to structure your content, what your website schema is, all of these different key elements to improve things. And there's some quick things that you can do, and then there's some really long implementation aspects of it. The one thing that people have said to me, which I think is really interesting, is that SEO and SEM was always considered like the team over there. Like, oh, well, maybe we should invite them to the meeting, right? And now what I'm hearing is this is really a holistic initiative that is unifying the marketing teams to understand what's going on in comms and what's going on in paid and, how are you doing social, and all of those pieces of your content are now working together to sort of feed the proverbial beast or the probabilistic models, the new tech platforms, and some of the old tech platforms too.
And I'm finding that actually to be a through line of a lot of what's going on in AI. The opening line of my new website is AI can be a huge consciousness raising exercise. What really is causing a lot of knitting together of things that were previously siloed. And if you read or listen to Toby Lutke's, the CEO of Shopify, he talks about AI making him a better CEO because he's learned to communicate more precisely through the prompting that he's had to do.
Yeah. AI makes my emails better too. But yes, no, I agree with you. It's it communicating and the definition of communication, somebody said this to me early in my career, is everyone leaving with the same message. So how often does that happen? And if we can do some wordsmithing and optimization to communicate more effectively, then I believe that people can be more productive.
And sorry, Christian, did you still have a question?
Sorry to dominate the floor for a minute.
No, you're fully rogue. You're like, I'm not going to Google anymore.
I'm trying to get out that boat as much as I possibly can. I purchased for like email. If Proton was more places to make it easier, though, it's hard to get away from Google because they are everywhere and everybody uses them.
Christian, what do you got?
30 seconds, please, on your product's target audience and its price.
Great question. So, our Gist Geo platform is self-service. We have 3 tiers right now. We have our starter, we have our growth, and we have our enterprise plan. Our enterprise plan is custom and based on sort of what the requirements are. There's a lot of managed services and additional product development and partnership going on in that arena. So that's at obviously a higher custom price point. The growth plan, it is under 5K for the year. And the starter is $99 a month. So, really, I don't think that the insights right now is ultimately what is going to be the most, the insights are the requirement. The paid or the organic optimization is the requirement. And the paid is really the growth engine beyond that, and how they work together is really the way that we see this. Our ads currently are all operated as a managed services today, but we are building towards the second half of launching them on a self-service capacity, mostly on the CPC side, but we'll probably also have some CPNs as well. And I would be happy to offer anyone on this call, I will share my contact information, or David can follow up with this, but I will happily share a free trial of 2 months of our Geo platform for your customers. And we also can do a dollar for dollar match of a media spend if you guys are interested in testing out some of the paid. So David, we can work together on sharing that offer.
Yeah, it's like a 10x return on AIMG membership right there.
There you go.
At least.
I don't want to throw in some Knicks gear. If you like.
And the championship hat
Okay.
for the highest spender.
Nice.
But not delivered till August, because that's when they're apparently coming. My dad would be very disappointed, but I'll give it to someone. No.
How about a Jalen Brunson jersey?
Any other burning questions?
Sorry, I'm doing too much multitasking. Did we dive deep enough on the how to measure like incremental uptick inside of the AEO ecosystem of any sort? Like, or is that just sort of a pipe dream these days?
I think that there's 2 pieces to this. One is what's your baseline, and then 2, what have you implemented based on the recommendations and optimizations that are shared in our platform? And then what does the uptick look like, right? So what you're really looking for is an increase in citations, which is really coming from authority, an increase in your share of voice.
But the citations aren't really going to be tangible until until AEO is serving up a link and someone clicks on it and the referral comes from like a Frontier Platforms chat experience, right? Like siloed kind of thing. Like that would be a way to sort of like poke inside there a bit, and you'd have, in theory, that particular version of the page wouldn't be accessible from Google, and or the referral link would be the way to validate that.
You can see the citations today in the LLMs. So citations generally would be, one is, are you referenced specifically based on your authority? So referencing, say, a medical research study or something like that.
Yes.
That would be, and that is.
Sorry, I meant the reference and the click. I'm just curious if people have ideas or just as exploring ways to punch a little deeper.
That's my question too. So generally, how many questions before somebody gets to a link? So I, for example, just asked a question about how do you manage sources for Notebook LM, and it gave a detailed answer, but there are no links in there, but there may be some references to some tools. How do you know, or can your tools track of the workflow of how many actual questions lead to a link or a reference?
We will show you on a query level the reference sources from that. And then our optimization is going to make recommendations. And those recommendations may include like do a content sponsored, like a paid content with X publisher because they are being cited more frequently than they're getting X number or X percentage of citations more than anyone else. So we do have under the lens of our platform, and anyone who wants to set up an account, do a walkthrough, I'm happy to walk you through the details of the metrics that we track and then what your action plan might look like. So again, David can share this and we'll take it from there. But I think to get under the hood, I just wanted to skim things at the high level, but to get under the hood, you really need to contextualize it based on your brand. And it's also different from, LLM to LLM.
And are the searches influenced by your own context, right? So because they're aware of who you are and what your interests are the answers influenced by that? And how do brands deal with that?
It's a good question. So the way that because really everything in an AI is probabilistic, the way that things work is you can ask the same question 3 times and get 3 different answers, directionally similar maybe. What we do is we actually have a deep insights where we understand your brand. Then we go through a deep insights analysis on the queries. We normalize things so that there's a level of statistical significance. And then that's where your insights from the deep analysis would come from. So we're trying to solve for the probabilistic nature of how queries work and how LLMs work.
How would you say you compare to something like airdrops?
So generally speaking, like I said, your scorecard is your scorecard. Everyone tracks that a little differently, but I think that you're going to find very similar metrics across the board. Really what I just said is we have leaned into what you can do about it and coming up not with just a, hey, do this, but like a full detailed action plan that incorporates new recommendations every single week. When somebody asked me what the mode is in this, I think the mode is service. I think that we're so early and people don't understand this, and really creating a level of expertise, not that dissimilar than some of the people Steph and Adam and I did in mobile, which is really helping brands understand why mobile is different, how, HTML5 is different than Flash. Those types of things were critical, which we were the experts in. And I think that service and really doing a lot of hand holding, aside from with you, Adam, too, because you are fully AI native now and you know how to do all of this. But kidding aside, I think that that's really, we're in the early we're in the first inning here and everyone's trying to figure this out. And the challenge and the reason why service is so important is because these models change all the time, right? So how do you continue to iterate and optimize and understand how these models change? And it's hard enough for us to keep up, so how does the layperson marketer who has 75,000 things on their plate keep up? So that's really what we're here to solve for.
This really is Google Analytics in 1990.
If I may ask, before we're up for time. You mentioned something, and maybe I misheard it. Something that you said that organizations can go in and see their visibility or their citations, the number of times their company was cited or something, you know, a number for citations. Maybe it's a percentage, maybe it's a raw number. I don't know. I think I heard that as you saying that they could go into like to the LLMs themselves and find this answer, but that must be wrong. I must have misheard that. And I'm guess you're saying that as your product, they could go into your product and get those numbers. Is that right?
They can go into our product and get those the metrics. And if you are in an LLM, you can actually go in and see where those specifically for a question, you can see where things are cited. I can show you how to do that. But what we're talking about is in the aggregate as opposed for one specific query.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm not talking about going in as a consumer in LLM. I'm talking about going in as a company or organization. Okay.
No, that's why you need a tool. That's why you need a geo tool in order to get that information.
Right.
Understand who's citing you, what your citation rate is, how it's different on Perplexity versus, you know, AI overviews, you name it.
Awesome. Well, we'll appreciate all this. Some great questions from Adams and people not named Adam. And Polly, always love the walkthrough and learn from you. So hope a lot of you get to stay connected. And yeah, we've got a packed lineup this summer. Next week we'll have Lisa Davis, who's the author of The Only Woman in the Room. And we'll keep these going. And yeah, thanks everyone for joining us today. Polly, always such a treat, and look forward to continuing to learn from you. And you can also pop in the Slack and share any follow-ups as well there. So we'll keep these moving, and hope everyone has a great week and enjoys at least watching the Knicks parade from afar tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. And then we can AI ourselves into the parade.
Exactly. Yeah. All right.
Awesome. Thanks again for having me, David. Appreciate it. And just put my email in the chat. So feel free to reach out.
Awesome.
Thanks for all the great participation.
Thank you.